On March 15, 2024, at 7:47 p.m., Officer Derek Holbrook made what would become the worst decision of his 22-year career. At Le Bernardin, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants, a scene was unfolding that would cost the Chicago Police Department $5.7 million, end 3 careers, and spark a Department of Justice investigation that would uncover a pattern of discrimination stretching back 15 years. What Officer Holbrook didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined in his wildest dreams, was that the well-dressed black man he was harassing wasn't just any citizen. He was Marcus Williams, married for 18 years to someone who had the power to ensure that justice wouldn't just be served, it would be served cold, thorough, and with interest. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Officer Holbrook's face would be on every news channel in America. His name would trend worldwide, and the video, would be viewed over 40 million times in just 72 hours. This is the story of how one officer's racism collided with karma in the most spectacular way possible. But before we dive into what happened that night, if you're watching from Chicago or anywhere else where justice matters to you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because this story? It's not just about Chicago. It's about every city where this happens every single day. Now, let me tell you about Marcus Williams. At 52 years old, Marcus had built the kind of life that embodied the American dream. Yale undergraduate, Harvard Medical School, and a 25-year career as one of Chicago's most respected cardiothoracic surgeons. He'd saved more lives than he could count, including, ironically, 2 police officers who'd been shot in the line of duty. But on this particular Friday evening, Dr. Marcus Williams was just a husband. A husband who'd left Northwestern Memorial Hospital after a grueling 12-hour surgery, changed into his best suit, and driven to Le Bernardin to celebrate his 18th wedding anniversary. He'd made the reservation 3 months in advance, table 12, by the window overlooking the Chicago River, the same table where he'd proposed to his wife 19 years earlier. He'd even pre-ordered the wine, a 2006 Chateau d'Yquem that cost more than Officer Holbrook's monthly car payment. Marcus had arrived at 7:15 p.m., 15 minutes early, as was his habit. The maitre d' had greeted him by name, as they always did. He'd been seated immediately, ordered a glass of water, and pulled out his phone to review the speech he'd prepared for his wife. You see, this wasn't just any anniversary. Earlier that week, Marcus had received word that he'd been selected as the new chief of surgery at Northwestern Memorial. After decades of dedication, he'd reached the pinnacle of his profession. Tonight was supposed to be a double celebration. The first text from his wife came at 7:25 p.m., running 5 minutes late. State legislature session went long. Can't wait to see you. Love you. Marcus smiled, used to his wife's hectic schedule. He sipped his water and watched the river lights beginning to twinkle in the March twilight. That's when Officer Derek Holbrook walked in. Officer Holbrook wasn't supposed to be there. He was off duty, meeting his brother-in-law for drinks at the bar. But old habits die hard, and Derek Holbrook had a habit of seeing threats where none existed, especially when those threats had dark skin. The moment Holbrook's eyes landed on Marcus, sitting alone at a prime table, something twisted in his gut. Here was a black man, alone, at one of Chicago's most expensive restaurants. In Holbrook's mind, the equation was simple. He watched Marcus for 3 minutes, noting the expensive suit, the Rolex, the comfortable way he held himself. Instead of seeing success, Holbrook saw suspicion. Instead of recognizing belonging, he assumed deception. At 7:33 p.m., Holbrook approached the maitre d'. "That gentleman at table 12, Holbrook said, not bothering to lower his voice. "How long has he been here?" Philippe, the maitre d', looked confused. "Dr. Williams?" "About 20 minutes. He has a reservation." "Is there a problem?" "Doctor?" Holbrook scoffed. "Right. And I'm the Pope." "Officer, I'm not sure what you're implying, but Dr. Williams is one of our regular guests. He and his wife dine here frequently." But Holbrook was already walking away, his mind made up. 22 years on the force had taught him to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming that something was wrong with this picture. He approached Marcus's table with the swagger of a man who'd never been held accountable for his actions. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification." Marcus looked up from his phone, his expression shifting from confusion to weary recognition. He'd been through this before. Not here, not in a place where he paid $500 for dinner, but the script was always the same. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" "ID now." Marcus slowly reached for his wallet, careful to move deliberately, knowing that sudden movements could escalate things. "May I ask what this is about?" "You can ask all you want after I see some identification." Marcus handed over his driver's license. Holbrook studied it like he was decoding nuclear launch codes. "This address current?" "Yes." "You live in Lincoln Park?" "Yes." "Uh-huh. And what exactly do you do for a living, Mr. Williams?" "Dr. Williams. I'm a surgeon at Northwestern Memorial." Holbrook laughed. Actually laughed. "Sure you are. And I bet you drove here in a Bentley too." "A Tesla, actually." "Officer, I'm waiting for my wife. We have a reservation. If you'd like to confirm that with the staff." "I don't need to confirm anything with anyone. What I need is for you to be straight with me. How about you tell me what you're really doing here?" The temperature at table 12 had dropped 20 degrees. Other diners were starting to notice. A woman at table 13 had her phone out, sensing that something was about to happen. "I'm really sitting at a table I reserved 3 months ago, waiting for my wife to celebrate our anniversary." "Your wife?" Holbrook's tone suggested Marcus had claimed to be married to a unicorn. "And where is this wife?" "On her way. She texted me 10 minutes ago." "Convenient." "She got a name?" Marcus paused. He knew that mentioning his wife's position could either defuse the situation or make it worse. Pride and pragmatism warred for a moment, before pragmatism won. "Lydia Williams." "And what does Lydia do?" Another pause. "Technically true, just not the whole truth." "An attorney." Holbrook nodded slowly, as if Marcus had just confirmed his suspicions. "Let me guess. She's also running late from court?" "From the legislature, actually." "The legislature." Now Holbrook was grinning. "Your attorney wife is at the state legislature on a Friday night. You know what I think? I think you're full of shit." By now, every eye in the restaurant was on table 12. Phones were out at 6 different tables. The maître d' was hovering nervously nearby, and a manager was making his way over. "Officer," the manager, David Chen, interjected smoothly. "Is there a problem here? Dr. Williams is one of our valued guests." Holbrook rounded on him. "I'll decide who's valued and who's not. Back off." "Sir, I must insist." "You must insist?" Holbrook's voice rose. "I'm conducting a police investigation, and you must insist? How about I investigate whether your kitchen passes health codes?" David retreated, but not far. He pulled out his phone and began making a call of his own. Marcus remained seated, hands visible on the table. He'd learned long ago that dignity was his best defense in these situations. "Officer, I understand you have a job to do, but I've done nothing wrong. I'm a customer here. I have a reservation, and I'm waiting for my wife." "What specifically do you think I've done?" "It's not about what you've done. It's about what you might do." "What I might do?" "Yeah. You're sitting here, alone, at a table for 2, in a restaurant where dinner costs more than most people make in a week. You claim you're a doctor, claim you're married to a lawyer, claim a lot of things, but something doesn't smell right." "What doesn't smell right is harassment," Marcus said quietly. Holbrook's face darkened. "You think this is harassment? You haven't seen harassment." "Actually, I have, many times. And this? This is textbook." "You got a mouth on you, don't you?" Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Lydia. "Parking now. Be there in 2 minutes. Can't wait to see you, baby." "My wife is parking," Marcus said. "She'll be here in 2 minutes. Perhaps we can clear this up then. Or perhaps we can clear it up at the station." "The station? On what grounds?" "Suspicious behavior. Potential fraud. Disturbing the peace." "Disturbing the peace?" "I haven't raised my voice once. I haven't moved from this chair. I've complied with every request you've made." "You're arguing with a police officer. That's disturbing my peace." At table 9, Jasmine Porter, a civil rights attorney who happened to be dining with clients, was recording everything. She'd already texted her assistant to start preparing a complaint. This was gold standard harassment, the kind of clear-cut case that usually got buried under he said, she said. But not tonight. Tonight there were witnesses. Tonight there were cameras. Tonight, Officer Holbrook was creating evidence with every word. "Stand up," Holbrook commanded. "I'd prefer to remain seated until my wife arrives." I said stand up. I won't ask again. Marcus slowly stood, keeping his hands visible. At 6'2", he was 3 inches taller than Holbrook, and the officer didn't like that. Not one bit. Turn around, hands on the table. Officer, this is unnecessary. Hands on the table. The restaurant was dead silent, except for the soft whir of phone cameras. Marcus turned and placed his hands flat on the white tablecloth, next to the anniversary card he'd brought for his wife. Holbrook began patting him down, making a show of it. Let's see what else you're lying about. He pulled out Marcus's wallet again, this time going through it card by card. Northwestern Memorial ID, American Medical Association membership, Black Card, Platinum Card, Illinois medical license. Nice forgeries, Holbrook muttered. Those aren't forgeries. Sure they're not. Just like you're really a doctor. Just like your imaginary wife is really a lawyer. That's when Holbrook found the card that would seal his fate. It was tucked behind Marcus's driver's license. A simple white card with the state seal that read, Dr. Marcus Williams, spouse of the Attorney General. Office of the Attorney General of Illinois. Security clearance. Level 1. Holbrook stared at it for 5 long seconds. The blood drained from his face so fast that Jasmine Porter later said he looked like he might faint. This is real, Marcus said quietly. That's real, Officer Holbrook. Yes, Marcus had gotten his name from his badge. You're married to the Attorney General? Attorney General Lydia Williams. Yes, for 18 years. Holbrook's hand holding the card began to shake. But pride and panic make terrible decisions together. This proves nothing. Anyone can print a card. He was doubling down. Even faced with evidence, even with the growing horror of what he'd done, Derek Holbrook was doubling down. Call it in, Marcus suggested. Call your dispatch. They can verify it in 30 seconds. But Holbrook was beyond reason now. He'd gone too far to back down. In his mind, admitting he was wrong now would be admitting he'd been wrong all along. And Derek Holbrook was never wrong. You're coming with me, he decided. On what charge? I'll figure that out later. Turn around. But as Marcus began to turn, a voice cut through the restaurant like a blade through silk. Derek, what are you doing to my husband? Attorney General Lydia Williams stood at the entrance of the dining room like an avenging angel in a Street John suit. 5'10" in heels, with the kind of presence that made judges sit up straighter, she took in the scene with eyes that missed nothing. Her husband, the man who'd held her hand through law school, who'd stayed up with her when she studied for the bar, who'd celebrated with her when she won her first case, who'd cried with her when they lost their first pregnancy, who'd been her rock through 20 years of marriage and 18 years of building their life together. That man was standing with his hands on a table while a cop performed a pat-down in the middle of the restaurant where they'd gotten engaged. Lydia, Marcus said, and in that one word Holbrook heard 20 years of love, partnership, and shared history. The Attorney General walked toward them with measured steps, her heels clicking on the hardwood like a countdown to doom. Her security detail, 2 state troopers in plain clothes, flanked her but stayed back. They knew their boss well enough to know when she needed space to work. Officer Holbrook, she said, reading his badge, I asked you a question. What are you doing to my husband? Holbrook's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Ma'am, he. There was suspicious. Suspicious? Lydia's voice could have frozen Lake Michigan. What exactly was suspicious about my husband sitting at our reserved table in a restaurant we've been coming to for 15 years? I didn't know he was you didn't know he was my husband. So what? Does that make him suspicious? Does that give you the right to humiliate him in public? Ma'am, if I had known. That's the point. Lydia's voice cracked like a whip. The entire restaurant flinched. You shouldn't need to know who he's married to. He's a human being, an American citizen, a customer in this restaurant. That should be enough. She turned to her husband. Marcus, are you okay? I'm fine, he said, straightening his suit jacket. No, you're not fine. You're standing in the middle of a restaurant being illegally searched by an officer who has no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, and apparently no common sense. She turned back to Holbrook. Badge number. Ma'am, badge number. Launsenjobai Sishitsi. Full name. Derek. Derek James Holbrook. Lydia pulled out her phone. Sarah, it's me. I need you to pull everything we have on Officer Derek James Holbrook, badge 2947, Chicago PD. Everything. Every complaint, every review, every parking ticket. And get me the chief of police on the line, now. While she talked, more state troopers were entering the restaurant. Word had gotten out that the Attorney General was in a situation, and her detail was expanding rapidly. Ma'am, Holbrook tried again, sweat now visibly beading on his forehead. This is all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Lydia ended her call and gave him her full attention. Let me make sure I understand. You saw my husband, a black man, sitting in a nice restaurant. You assumed he didn't belong. You demanded his ID. You questioned his profession, his residence, his right to be here. You accused him of forgery. You searched him. You threatened to arrest him. What part of that am I misunderstanding? I was just doing my job. Your job? You're off duty. Holbrook's face went from pale to green. Yes. But. So, you're harassing citizens while off duty. That's interesting. Tell me, Officer Holbrook, how many white men have you randomly investigated while off duty? Silence. That's what I thought. Marcus spoke up. Lydia, let's just go. It's our anniversary. No. Her voice was steel. We're not going anywhere. We have a reservation. We're going to sit down. We're going to have our dinner. And Officer Holbrook is going to explain to his superiors why he thought it was appropriate to harass the Attorney General's husband for the crime of existing while black. She looked around the restaurant, taking in all the phones recording. I hope everyone got this, because Officer Derek Holbrook just gave us a perfect example of what's wrong with policing in America. And I promise you, this will not be swept under the rug. The next 15 minutes unfolded like a masterclass in consequences. Chief of Police Raymond Carter arrived personally, his face cycling through the 5 stages of grief as Lydia explained what had happened. Officer Holbrook, the chief said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. You're suspended, effective immediately. Badge and gun. Now. Chief? You were just what? Racially profiling the Attorney General's husband? In front of 30 witnesses? While being recorded? Officer, do you have any idea what you've done? As Holbrook surrendered his badge and weapon, Lydia was fielding calls. The governor, the mayor, the head of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Word was spreading fast, and everyone wanted to know what had happened. But the real revelation came when Lydia's assistant called back with Holbrook's history. Put her on speaker, Lydia commanded. Ma'am, Officer Derek Holbrook has been with CPD for 22 years. In that time, he's had 47 excessive force complaints, 39 of them from black citizens. He's been investigated 16 times for racial profiling. He's cost the city $2.3 million in settlements over the past decade. There's more. Go on. He's been flagged by Internal Affairs 4 times but never disciplined. His personnel file has notes from 3 different supervisors recommending sensitivity training that he never completed. And, this is interesting, he's been caught on body cam making racial slurs 11 times, but the footage was always deemed inconclusive or lacking context. Marcus shook his head. Everyone knew, Lydia confirmed, and everyone looked the other way. Well, not anymore. She turned to the chief. I want every case Officer Holbrook has touched in the last 5 years reviewed. Every arrest, every ticket, every interaction. If he so much as jaywalked, I want to know about it. Yes, ma'am. And Chief? This isn't just about him. This is about a system that kept him on the streets despite 47 complaints. I want names. I want to know who protected him, who covered for him, who enabled him, because they're just as guilty as he is. The chief aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Understood. But Holbrook, even now, even faced with the complete destruction of his career, couldn't help himself. This is reverse discrimination, he muttered. If he was white, Lydia cut him off, you would have wished him a pleasant evening and walked away. Don't insult our intelligence by pretending otherwise. She turned to address the restaurant, where every diner and staff member was watching in fascinated horror. I apologize for the disturbance to your evening, but I won't apologize for addressing this publicly. Because this happens every day, in every city, to people who don't have the power to fight back. Today, you witnessed what happens when racism meets accountability. Remember this, share this, and next time you see something like this happening, speak up, because silence is complicity. Then, with a grace that left everyone breathless, she took her husband's hand. Now, if you'll excuse us, it's our anniversary, and we have 18 years to celebrate. Marcus, shall we? As they sat down at their table, table 12, by the window, overlooking the Chicago River, the restaurant burst into spontaneous applause. But Lydia Williams wasn't done. Not by a long shot. By 9 p.m. that night, the video was everywhere. Jasmine Porter, the civil rights attorney who'd captured the whole thing, posted it with the caption, "This is why we need accountability. Attorney General Williams just showed us how it's done." 6 hours. That's all it took for the video to go from a Chicago restaurant to the trending page of every social media platform in existence. Number driving while black became number dining while black. News outlets scrambled to get statements. The Chicago Police Department's phone lines crashed from the volume of calls. By midnight, the protests had started. Not violent protests, but vigils. Hundreds of Chicago residents gathered outside CPD headquarters, holding candles and signs that read, "How many more?" And Holbrook was just the one who got caught. The next morning, Saturday, March 16th, 2024, the story exploded nationally. Every major news network led with it. The video had been viewed 12 million times and climbing. Talk show hosts canceled their planned segments to discuss it. Politicians who usually avoided racial issues were forced to comment. But the real bombshell came at Lydia Williams' 10 a.m. press conference. Standing at the podium in the Illinois Attorney General's office, flanked by her senior staff and with Marcus by her side, she dropped the hammer. Last night's incident was not isolated. It was not an anomaly. It was a symptom of a disease that has infected law enforcement for far too long. Officer Derek Holbrook felt comfortable harassing my husband because he'd done it before. Many times. Without consequence. She paused, letting that sink in. This morning, I've directed my office to open a full investigation into the Chicago Police Department's handling of racial profiling complaints. We will examine every complaint against Officer Holbrook that was dismissed, downplayed, or ignored. We will identify every supervisor who failed to act, every administrator who looked the other way, every colleague who remained silent. The room was electric with tension. Furthermore, I'm announcing the creation of the Illinois Accountability Task Force. This task force will have the power to investigate, prosecute, and hold accountable any law enforcement officer who violates the civil rights of Illinois residents. No more internal investigations that go nowhere. No more sweeping things under the rug. No more protecting bad cops at the expense of the communities they're supposed to serve. A reporter raised his hand. Attorney General Williams, what about Officer Holbrook specifically? Officer Holbrook will face both criminal and civil charges: deprivation of civil rights, harassment, abuse of power, and false imprisonment for starters. But this isn't just about him. This is about the 46 other complaints that were ignored. This is about the supervisors who kept him on the street. This is about a culture that enables racism and then acts shocked when it's exposed. By Monday morning, the dominoes were falling fast. 3 supervisors who had dismissed complaints against Holbrook announced their retirement. The Chicago City Council called an emergency session to discuss police reform. The Department of Justice announced they were opening their own investigation. But the most powerful moment came from an unexpected source. Patricia Collins, a 6-7-year-old grandmother from the South Side, came forward with her own story. 15 years earlier, Holbrook had arrested her grandson for looking suspicious while waiting for a bus. The charges were dropped, but her grandson spent 3 days in jail and lost his job. She'd filed a complaint. Nothing happened. "I kept that complaint," she said, holding up a yellowed form at a community meeting. "Kept it all these years, hoping someone would listen. Thank God for Attorney General Williams. Thank God someone finally said, 'Enough.'" Within a week, 37 more people came forward with similar stories about Holbrook. The pattern was undeniable. The evidence was overwhelming, and the city of Chicago was forced to confront an ugly truth it had been avoiding for decades. The legal proceedings against Derek Holbrook began on June 3, 2024, in the Federal District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. The charges were extensive. Asterisk, deprivation of civil rights, under color of law, 18 U.S.C., Section 242. Conspiracy against rights, Thamania Asher, U.S.C., Paragraph 241. Asterisk, false imprisonment. Asterisk, harassment. Asterisk, abuse of power. Asterisk, misconduct in public office. The prosecution, led personally by Assistant U.S. Attorney Michelle Chen, came prepared. They had the video from 14 different angles. They had witness testimonies from everyone in the restaurant. They had Holbrook's entire history of complaints, but most damning of all, they had a pattern. During discovery, the prosecution uncovered Holbrook's personal emails and text messages. The content was shocking even to seasoned investigators. Racial slurs, jokes about hunting season, and a group chat with other officers called the Cleaners, where they bragged about their encounters with black citizens. One text, sent just 2 hours before the incident at Le Bernardin, read, "Heading to fancy restaurant. Bet I find at least one who doesn't belong. Never fails." The defense tried to argue that Holbrook was just doing his job, that he had reasonable suspicion based on his experience. But that argument crumbled when Michelle Chen presented her evidence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said, holding up a stack of papers 2 inches thick. "These are the complaints against Officer Holbrook. 47 complaints. 47 times someone said, 'This officer violated my rights,' and 47 times nothing was done. Today, we do something." The prosecution presented a devastating statistical analysis. Of the 3,847 suspicious person stops Holbrook had made in his career, 89% were black men. Of those, only 3% resulted in any charges, and most of those charges were later dropped. In predominantly white neighborhoods, Holbrook's stop rate dropped by 94%. Dr. Marcus Williams testified on day 3. Composed and dignified, he walked the jury through not just that night, but through a lifetime of similar encounters. "Officer Holbrook asked me what I was really doing there," Marcus said. "I'll tell you what I was really doing. I was existing. I was breathing. I was black. And for Officer Holbrook, that was crime enough." The defense's case lasted exactly 1 day. They called character witnesses who described Holbrook as a dedicated officer and a family man. They tried to paint him as a victim of cancel culture and political correctness gone mad. It didn't work. On June 19, 2024, after just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts. Judge Catherine Morrison, known for her measured approach to sentencing, did not mince words. "Officer Holbrook, you took an oath to protect and serve all citizens, not just the ones who look like you. You violated that oath not once, not twice, but dozens of times over 2 decades. You traumatized innocent people. You abused your power. And you did it all while believing you were untouchable." She paused, looking directly at him. "You were wrong. This court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, to be served without possibility of parole. Upon release, you will be permanently barred from any law enforcement position. You will perform 2,000 hours of community service in the communities you terrorized. And you will personally apologize to every victim we can locate." But the criminal trial was just the beginning. The civil lawsuit, filed by Marcus and Lydia Williams against the City of Chicago and the Chicago Police Department, sought not just damages, but systemic change. They were joined by 43 other plaintiffs, all victims of Holbrook's harassment over the years. The city tried to settle quickly and quietly. The Williams refused. "This isn't about money," Lydia said at a press conference. "This is about change. Real, lasting, structural change." The civil trial revealed even more damning evidence. Internal memos showing supervisors were aware of Holbrook's behavior. Training videos where he made discriminatory comments that were ignored. A promotion he received after his 30th complaint. On November 12, 2024, the jury awarded $5.7 million in damages. But more importantly, they mandated reforms. Asterisk, mandatory body cameras for all officers, with footage reviewed monthly. Asterisk. An independent civilian oversight board with the power to fire officers. Asterisk. Automatic investigation of any officer with more than 3 similar complaints. Asterisk. Quarterly bias training for all officers. Asterisk. Public database of all complaints against officers. The city agreed to all terms rather than appeal. Derek Holbrook reported to federal prison on August 1, 2024. His first day as inmate #47820 was, according to sources, educational. The man who had spent 22 years using his badge as a weapon was now just another number in orange. His wife filed for divorce 2 weeks later. His children changed their last names. His brother, also a cop, resigned from the force rather than face the constant questions and sideways glances. The house in the suburbs went into foreclosure. The boat he'd bought with overtime money was repossessed. But Holbrook's personal destruction was just the tip of the iceberg. The investigation Lydia Williams had promised bore fruit. 3 deputy chiefs were forced to resign when it was revealed they had systematically buried complaints against officers like Holbrook. 12 sergeants were demoted. 23 officers with similar complaint patterns were placed on permanent desk duty pending review. The cleaners group chat led to a separate FBI investigation. 7 officers were indicted on conspiracy charges. The chat logs, released to the public, showed a coordinated effort to target black neighborhoods for harassment, complete with a point system for arrests and stops. Chief Raymond Carter, despite initially cooperating with the investigation, was forced to resign when emails surfaced showing he had been aware of the cleaners for 3 years and done nothing. His replacement, Natalie Washington, became Chicago's first black female police chief. Her first act was to implement all the court-mandated reforms, plus additional measures. The Chicago Police Department's budget was restructured. Money that had gone to military equipment was redirected to training and community programs. The department's legal settlement fund, which had paid out $113 million the previous year, dropped to $31 million as incidents of misconduct plummeted under actual accountability. The ripple effects spread beyond Chicago. 23 other cities implemented similar reforms without waiting to be sued. The Williams Protocol, as it became known, became the gold standard for police accountability nationwide. Law schools added courses on it. Police academies reluctantly adopted it. Officer recruitment changed too. The department found that when they actually held officers accountable, better candidates applied. People who wanted to genuinely protect and serve, not those looking for power and impunity. But perhaps the most significant consequence was the cultural shift. Officers who previously remained silent about misconduct began speaking up, knowing they had protection. The blue wall of silence developed cracks, then gaps, then crumbled entirely in many departments. A year later, complaints against Chicago police had dropped by 67%. Use of force incidents decreased by 54%. Community trust surveys showed improvement for the first time in decades. Crime actually went down as communities became more willing to cooperate with police they could trust. Derek Holbrook, sitting in his federal cell, became a cautionary tale told in every police academy in America. The man who thought his badge made him untouchable became the textbook example of what happens when accountability finally arrives. His former colleagues summed it up in an anonymous interview. "We all knew Derek was dirty. We just never thought he'd be stupid enough to mess with someone who could fight back. Guess we all learned that anyone can fight back if we finally give them the tools." A year after that night at Bernardin, Marcus and Lydia Williams sat down for an exclusive interview with 60 Minutes. Asked if he would change anything about that night, Marcus was thoughtful. "You know, part of me wishes it had never happened. No one should have to go through that humiliation, that dehumanization. But another part of me, the bigger part, is grateful it was me, because we had the resources, the platform, and the power to make sure it meant something." Lydia nodded, adding, "Every day for 22 years, Derek Holbrook did this to someone. The only difference that night was that he did it to someone whose wife could ensure there were consequences." "That's not justice. Justice is when everyone has that protection." The interviewer asked about forgiveness. "I don't forgive him," Lydia said simply. "Forgiveness requires repentance. And Derek Holbrook isn't sorry for what he did. He's sorry he got caught. But this was never about him. It was about a system that created him, enabled him, and protected him." Marcus had returned to surgery, but with a new mission. He now spent 1 day a week at a free clinic on the South Side, providing care to communities that had been over-policed and underserved. Many of his patients had their own Derek Holbrook stories. The restaurant, Le Bernardin, created the Williams Table. Table 12 was permanently reserved for couples facing discrimination. Once a month, they hosted a dinner for civil rights advocates, with all proceeds going to police accountability organizations. The real victory, though, was in the statistics. In the year following the incident, police complaints in Chicago dropped to their lowest level in 40 years. The city saved $82 million in legal settlements. Officer recruitment increased by 34%, with more diverse candidates than ever before. Community police relations improved in every measurable metric. Crime decreased by 12%, citywide as communities began trusting law enforcement again. The Williams case became required reading in criminal justice programs nationwide. The video was shown in every police academy, not as shame, but as education. This is what unchecked bias looks like, instructors would say. This is what happens when we forget we serve the community, not rule it. But perhaps the most powerful reflection came from an unexpected source. Patricia Collins, the grandmother who had kept her complaint for 15 years, sent Marcus and Lydia a letter. "My grandson is a teacher now. He teaches history. He shows your video to his students and tells them, 'This is why we study the past, so we can change the future. Thank you for changing our future.'" As the interview ended, Lydia was asked if she had any final thoughts. "Just this," she said, looking directly into the camera. "To every Derek Holbrook out there, still wearing a badge, still abusing your power, still believing you're untouchable, your time is up. The people you've been stepping on, we're standing up. And we're not asking for justice anymore. We're taking it." The last image was of Marcus and Lydia walking out of the studio hand in hand, ready to celebrate their 19th anniversary at a small, quiet restaurant where they were just another couple in love, living in an America that was slowly, finally, learning to see them that way too.